This is the video to explain the first question on the Graphing and Math Study Guide for Macroeconomics. And it's asking you to diagram expansionary fiscal policy. So remember that that is either decreasing taxes and or increasing government spending. And the decrease in taxes would allow people to consume and invest more, and the increased government spending obviously is an increase in government spending. All three of those things, consumption, investment, and government spending, if those increase, that shifts out aggregate demand and increases GDP. So that's what you'd want to do with expansionary policy, being that we'd likely be in a recession if we're conducting that. So we start off, as it asks there, with A, with a deflationary gap, and you can see on the far right of the four models there is ASAD, and we can see we're starting off with AD1 intersecting AS1 at Y1 on the x-axis and P1 on the y-axis, and we can see the gap between full employment output, YFE, and Y1 is a recessionary gap, or deflationary gap, means the same thing. Then it says for B up top, also please show the effect of increased government safety and health regulations upon businesses. That all these regulations, just like with everything involving aggregate supply, has to do with costs. And so if regulations are increased, that's going to increase businesses' costs. And if you increase businesses' costs, they're going to want to supply less. And if it's on the aggregate, then all of them will want to supply less. So we have aggregate supply shifting in from AS1 to AS2. Now to start with the far left, with the money market, because the government now spends more than it takes in, meaning we have a budget deficit. If the government wants to spend more or tax less, that means we have a larger budget deficit. So you can see down below, A, government needs to borrow to finance spending, and B, thus increasing demand for money. We can see in the money market with fiscal policy, because the government wants to increase its spending or lower its taxes, we're going to have to borrow more money in order to do so. And what that does is shift out the demand curve, and it puts upward pressure on interest rates, as stated down below. So what's taking place in the money market is that we have an increase in government spending, or you can put decrease in taxes leading to increased consumption. And that's what's leading to the government needing to borrow, demand increasing, and increased pressure on interest rates. This, remember, is the crowding out effect. And so we can see in the loanable funds market that the increase in interest rates have lessened the amount of money available to banks to loan. So we can see in A and B there, due to increased borrowing from the government to finance increased spending or reduction in taxes, available funds have decreased, and B, decreasing the supply of such funds, we see that interest rates have now increased. Because they're now higher interest rates, we move back along that demand curve and we see investment go to I2 when interest rates have gone to lowercase I2. With higher interest rates, businesses are going to find fewer projects to invest in that make them a profit, so there's going to be less investment spending. Then we move to foreign exchange, and we remember from previous chapters that increased U.S. interest rates are going to attract foreign investment, and this increases demand for dollars, appreciating our currency and leading to lower net exports. Remember that investment in loanable funds and foreign exchange market, we're talking about two different types of investment spending. In the domestic investment and loanable funds market, it is going to be companies borrowing to invest in themselves, and then in the foreign exchange market, it's people looking to find the highest rate of return, so it's a different type of investment there. And finally, we go over to the last market, ASAD, and we see A, that higher government spending has increased AD from AD1 to AD2, but the crowding out effect, and you need to state that somewhere here, the crowding out effect led to lower investment that we can see in the loanable funds market, and we can see lower net exports that were caused by the appreciation of our exchange rate. So AD2 moves back into AD3. And then we also had the previous discussion of the AS curve shifting in due to those increased regulations stated up above and B up top, and the first explanation of the problem. So we can see that fiscal policy is not having the desired effect. In our final outcome of AS2 and AD3, we see Y2 and P3. We still have a recessionary or deflationary gap, and we have not come out of this recession because the fiscal policy is crowding out private investment and appreciating our currency that's lowering net exports.